Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the match preview for the game between the Pies and St Kilda this upcoming Saturday night at Marvel Stadium. The Pies come in after the bye 11-2. Typically 16 wins consolidates that top two position, one of those top two positions, and is probably really highly coveted right now for Victorian sides who are amongst it, and there's not many of them. Being, just Geelong and I guess Geelong, Collingwood and Hawthorn at this point. Those top two spots are hold extra importance this year just because of the interstate teams that are floating around that top four, like your Gold Coast, your Brisbane, your Adelaide. You certainly wouldn't want to play your first final at one of those interstate grounds. Collingwood obviously travel quite well, particularly in Adelaide. But, let's look at ticking off what are we, 11-2. Treat this as a 2-week block against two sides that we should be beating. And that's why I put it in as a 2-week block, because of how badly this could go if things went to trend in the trajectory that we should be expecting from these games. So lock in on these 2 weeks against St Kilda, against West Coast. St Kilda, not historically, because historically we've won, 161 to 62? No, we've had all-time 162 wins to 61. However, in the last 10 games, we're only 6-4 against them. We remember last year, we had a close game against them in Gather Round a couple years ago. So it hasn't been all smooth sailing against the Sainers. And playing at Marvel, you could mark it as a danger game. The story on their end is that they're quite fed up with some of their experienced players not coming to the game, essentially, and performing and lifting their younger players. So, from what I'm hearing, fans want wholesale changes. So, look, there's a bit of uproar on their side of things. Let's just obviously narrow in on what's important to us, and that's first and foremost bringing in Lipinski and Bruz. Bringing them back into the side. Lip and Bruz both reportedly got through today's main training session, so that's good to hear. Bruz is someone we could have used against the Demons, just that real grunt, and another word that rhymes with that we won't say, but he has that, and that's what we need, and certainly in this period of the season, the actual season itself being how cold it is, I think you want those players who are just rugged and just going to get you through these really tough weeks or months of winter. And then we know what Bruz brings us in a finals environment. And Lipinski's been pretty good all year long. He's had, there's been a bit of conjecture around his contest work, and he perhaps had shown some signs in the Hawthorn game that suggested he's maybe put more of an effort into those side of things. So that, along with his elite ball use, which is always the case and has been for the entirety of this season, I think is a real asset to the side right now. It does potentially hinder where Ed Allen stands at the moment going into the next couple of weeks with, if you have Sidey, Lipinski, Crisp, and Allen. Who else plays the wing? We had Lipinski, Crisp, Sidey, and then there's Allen. So there's four players there who can play the role really well. After the game against the D's, I'm just not sure what they do with Ed Allen. Maybe if they make him the sub, you would have seen in the predicted 23. That's what we have. We predict him to start on Saturday. It also means JDG is still not available. He's to be assessed in the next few weeks. Just getting through some skill-based training is going to be the next step for him. So it just means more of an opportunity for those players who are on the cusp of, or on the periphery, or they're fringe players like your Sullivans, Ed Allen. These type of players are just going to have to put in, somehow find a way to put some really big games together if they want to keep their spot when someone like JDG comes through. You've got Titch who's knocking at the door. We heard that there are 8 players they've had conversations with regards to contracts next year. 2 of those being Tom Mitchell and Mason Cox were told to wait. So they're probably looking at seeing where their form's at towards the back end of this season. Coxie surprisingly has informed the club that he wants to keep playing next year. I thought most of us would have thought he'd retire at the end of this year, but if offered a contract, he's going to continue. So that just, gives us a clear idea of where Coxie's mind is at, and he wants to keep going. So, yeah, Titch and Cox always going to be around the muck when it comes to selection discussions. So probably just look for them to build on some strong VFL form this weekend. I think they're also playing on Saturday at 2 p.m. The other narrative that may or may not be going into this game is Tim Membry being delisted, not being offered 2 years for the Sainers. I feel like they could really use a Tim Membry right now, just barring, not even factoring in the Max King situation, how he's been out all year. I just feel like you don't need to go as young as what you think you need to, if that makes any sense. I think you can keep, like Collingwood keep the older players who are performing. Tim Membry was performing, kicked 30-odd goals last year. Anyhow, I'd like to see Tim Membry kick 2 or 3 and just really enjoy this one. I think he deserves it. What can the Pies improve on going into the final series from a team level? I think it's just cleaning up our contest and our clearance game a bit. I feel like in our last 5 games, we've been beaten quite comprehensively in those areas. And this is without changing the side. I think what we have right now in the team can turn things around. So that's something to keep an eye on against St Kilda, who themselves aren't amazing in the clearance game or the contest game. So after games against like North Melbourne and the D's, who are really tough sides in those categories, we come up against a lesser side relative to those two. I'd really like to see us tick those boxes, and that would really bring our game together. When we were at our absolute tip-top best, we were winning contest, clearance. We were just winning all across the ground, tackling pressure. So putting all those things together will make us a very, very tough side to beat going into the finals series. Is there anything else that we'd like to talk about? I don't think so, guys. I think it's pretty clear cut, guys. Just keep the ball rolling. Let's not have a similar back end of the season like we did last year post-bye. I always keep singing this in my mind: Gold Coast, Geelong, Hawthorn, Essendon. The post-bye blues. God. PTSD. All right. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Is there anything you have in mind that is potentially something we should be talking about going into this game against the Saints? Go Pies.